The top stories tonight in Y News. President Rodrigo Duterte reports the significant accomplishments by his administration. However, he admits that illegal drugs and corruption still linger in the country.
Anti-government protests conducted by progressive groups ended peacefully despite altercations with the police over delay.
Quezon City and Davao City detect their first case of the more transmissible COVID-19 Delta variant.
A new batch of Israel experts arrive in the Philippines to share their best practices on COVID-19 response.
And thunderstorms in London cause severe flash flooding. Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from Quezon City. Today is Monday, July 26, 2021. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I am Hidilyn Diaz.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I'm Angelo Castro III.
First in the news. President Rodrigo Duterte reported to the nation significant accomplishments made by his administration aimed at reducing poverty, fighting graft and corruption, and improving peace and security. Rosalie Cos will give us more details live. Yes, Rosalie.
Arlene, free education, universal healthcare, gains from war against illegal drugs, criminality, and corruption, infrastructure projects. These are some of the accomplishments of the government for the past 5 years, according to President Rodrigo Duterte. The president said he had thought the government has no funds to do this, but were done during his term. Also, the president thanked the Congress for working with the executive branch in enhancing the capabilities of the AFP and the PNP through the modernization program. He also mentioned about raising the salaries of the military and uniformed personnel in 2018. However, he also reiterated the importance of continuous upgrading of the defense capability to ensure that we will be able to uphold our territorial integrity and sovereignty from external and security threats. He said with the creation of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, the government made great strides in addressing the root causes of armed conflict through community development. He cited 17,000 former communist rebels who have surrendered to the government and returned to the fold of law. Meanwhile, the chief executive also trumpeted the finished projects under the Build infrastructure program, such as the LRT2 East Extension Project, Kalayaan Bridge, as well as the new terminal in Clark International Airport, among others. He said the infrastructure spending of the government increased to 5% of the gross domestic product. He directed the Department of Public Works and Highways, as well as the local government units and other government agencies to fast-track the projects and finish within his term to spur economic growth. The president also mentioned about addressing the 3 million backlog of driver's licenses in 2016 and the extension of validity of new driver's license to 5 years, as well as the Philippine passport to 10 years. Meanwhile, the chief executive hit again the Communist Party of the Philippines, but is confident that the armed conflict will come to an end through the help of local government units. The president also never forgets about the issue of illegal drugs and once again warned those who are involved in the proliferation of illegal drugs. Regarding corruption, he admitted that it is endemic in the government and will never be stopped unless the government is completely overturned. All personnel are dismissed and replaced with new generation. On foreign policy, he said the Philippines will continue to work with all nations and is committed to be a responsible member of the international community. He reiterated, gone are the days when the Philippines decides and acts in the shadows of the great powers. On the maritime dispute with China, he said the arbitral award is part of the international law that no country can ignore and diminish. Though this is his last SONA, the president did not fail to mention other controversial topics such as the water concession agreements, the issue of ABS-CBN Corporation, as well as the Manila Bay rehabilitation. On COVID-19 pandemic, he cited the efforts of Congress in passing Bayanihan 1 and 2 to assist the Filipinos greatly affected by the pandemic, as well as the intensified testing capacity and construction of more quarantine facilities. He also mentioned about the possibility of imposing new lockdowns if the country will experience extreme COVID-19 surge due to more transmissible and deadlier Delta variant. However, he warned of irreversible economic damage if more lockdowns are declared. He also encouraged local government units to intensify their vaccination program. Harleen, the president said if there's one thing he could be proud of is that he did not waver even once in doing the unpopular, even to uphold the greatest good for the greatest number. Back to you, Harleen.
Thank you, Rosalie Cos, reporting live. Several lawmakers expressed their support to President Rodrigo Duterte as he sets new legislative agenda in his last State of the Nation address. Nel Maribohok has the details live. Yes, Nel?
The allies of President Rodrigo Duterte in the lower house expressed their support to President's proposed laws that he wants to urgently passed by Congress. Senior Citizen Party List Representative Rodolfo Ordonez will personally push for the passage of unified system of separation and retirement. According to Ordonez, like what President Duterte said, the unified system of separation and retirement will maintain government fiscal responsibility and will provide adequate benefits to uniformed personnel. The lawmaker wants also to push for the approval of Centenarian Bill and Senior Social Pension Bill. Bohol 3rd District Representative Alexi Tutor also supported the bill. President Duterte also calls out the Congress to pass the proposed amendments to Public Service Act, Foreign Investment Act of 1991, and the Retail Liberalization Act that will help boost the country's economy amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The House leadership already expressed their support to the said bills that was already certified as urgent by the President. The President also wants to pursue the passage of the creations of Center for Disease Control, Department of Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos, Department of Disaster Resilience, Fire Protection Modernization Program, and e-governance bill that seeks to fast-track government transactions in this digital age. Meanwhile, Makabayan Bloc is not satisfied with President Duterte's last SONA.
What we see in the last 3 hours, para tayong na deja vu. Ito yung mga wishlist niya nung unang SONA niya. Kaya ang kanyang pinagsasabi, parang it's a legacy, no? Pathetically, it's a legacy of pathetic failures, no? Monumental failures ng Duterte administration.
According to the group, it's totally untrue that President Duterte is addressing the roots of armed conflict and insists that the government needs to develop national industries and implement the land reform to overcome record hunger and joblessness. Harleen?
Thank you, Nel Maribohok, reporting live.
Meanwhile, despite the threat of the coronavirus, several progressive groups gathered in the streets to express their sentiments to the government. The Philippine National Police, meanwhile, says the protest ended peacefully and was organized. Dante Amento has more details live. Yes, Dante.
Say that the Duterte administration is entirely a failure, particularly in its campaign to suppress illegal drugs, contractualization of the local workers, effort to end terrorism, insurgency, among others. The government also allegedly failed to respond to the current COVID-19 pandemic when it comes to the vaccines procurement and rollout, lack of benefits for the health workers and those who are affected by the lockdowns, and the issue of corruption. The groups denounced the administration's foreign policy, particularly with China over the West Philippine Sea issue.
Ngayong huling SONA ni Duterte, wala na kaming ibang inaasahan dahil yung naipakita niya ng 5 taon, sapat na para maghusga ang taong bayan. Nawakasan na. Kasi lalo lang tayo naghihirap dahil wala namang naibigay na responde kaugnay sa kabuhayan na nakatulong talaga sa ating mamamayan.
Sa gitna ng pandemya, patuloy na lumalala at tumataas yung tiraniyang pamumuno dito sa ating bansa. Ang daming mga nagugutom. Ang dami yung araw-araw na pamamaslang at pagpatay.
The recent statement of the chief executive on his plan to run again is allegedly his way to escape the rule of law over the crime of murder committed by his regime, and that he is using the AFP and PNP through NTF-ELCAC and anti-terrorism law to silence those critical of the government for the end goal to remain in power beyond 2022.
Mula nung pinirmahan ni Pangulong Duterte yung Anti-Terror Act, isa tayo dun sa Cabuyao 11 no, na naaresto at illegal na dinisperse ng mga kapulisan sa Cabuyao. Hindi man kami kinasuhan ng kasong Anti-Terror Act, no, pero malinaw no, na gusto nila na proteksyonan yung batas.
Meanwhile, the militant groups have ended their protest rally at past 1 o'clock this afternoon at Commonwealth Avenue, but a slight contention between the rallyists and the PNP occurred after the militant groups insisted to approach St. Peter Church.
Hindi kami nakikita mo ba kung gaano ka kaya pagkakasayin mo dyan? Takdaan! Sir, ayusin niyo yung hanay niyo yung mag-aala sa amin. Subukan po natin, sir. Ano yung pinag-usapan? Sumunod kayo.
But Quezon City Police District Chief Brigadier General Antonio Yara explains the rallyists wanted to occupy the entire northbound of Commonwealth Avenue.
Nagkaroon ng konting negotiation, no? At napagkasunduan naman na sila ay mag-move right, no? Pagka northbound ka, move right off the road to give way for the motorists. So nagawa naman, no? Nakakuha tayo ng mga at least 4 lanes, no? Para sa motorist. At nagawa rin nilang makapasok at makabante pa dito sa tapat ng Meralco.
Diego, according to the authorities, some 2,500 to 3,000 individuals have attended the protest rally this morning. But according to the QCPD, it was one of the most peaceful and organized protest rally that they have provided for security. And that's the latest live. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you, Dante Amento, for that live report. Meanwhile, several groups also conducted a rally to show their support to President Rodrigo Duterte on his last SONA. However, some of the protesters were seen not following the minimum health protocols imposed by the government. Janice Inhente reports why.
Around 100 supporters of the government converged today in Mendiola, Manila to express their trust to President Rodrigo Duterte, who has only a year left in his term. According to them, President Duterte gave the Filipinos a peaceful life. The groups also lauded the good governance and the legacy that the president has achieved in his term. Among them are the anti-drug war and anti-terrorist campaign of the government.
For the first time, napansin yung insurgency na nangyayari sa kabundukan. For the first time, in-address nila yung problema ng ating mga barangay at ng mga nasa maibabang antas ng ating lipunan. Si President Duterte lang po ang gumawa nun.
Sila po yung mga leader ng mga front organization, medyo masison, na nambibiktima po sa ating mga kabataan. Ayan ang aming panawagan na i-disqualify, lalo na yung kabataan party list, ang lahat na nasa Makabayan Black.
Meanwhile, despite constant reminders from authorities, several protesters still failed to follow health protocols. Some were not wearing face shields, while others were not following the proper distance to avoid transmission. Earlier, the Department of Health says protesters should quarantine and coordinate with local health personnel once they manifest COVID-19 symptoms such as fever, headache, cough, tardiness, loss of taste and smell, body pain, and sore throat. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
After making controversial statements against individuals or groups accused of having ties with communist groups, Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. has ended his 38-year military career as the commander of the Southern Luzon Command. However, Parlade assures that even after his retirement, he will continue his fight against terrorism. Lea Ilagan reports why.
Former Southern Luzon Command Chief Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. formally retires from his military service at the age of 56. Parlade was replaced by 2nd Infantry Division Commander Major General Bartolome Vicente Bacaro in a joint change of command and retirement ceremony held at Camp Nakar in Quezon Province on Sunday. AFP Chief of Staff General Cirilito Sobihana praised Parlade for his efforts to destroy the remaining communist terrorist groups or CTGs operating in Southern Luzon. Sobihana adds Parlade pursued the effective and timely implementation of their anti-terrorism campaign. Last month, Parlade rendered his resignation as spokesperson of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict or NTF-LCAC due to some issues and controversies. On a recent phone interview to UNTV News, Parlade said he will not stop his fight against the CPP-NPA even he retires from service.
Bakit? Bawal po magsalita kung retired ka na. I-criticize expose yung ating mga kalaban kung retired ka na.
Parlade also gave a message to Major General Bartolome Vicente Bacaro who replaced him as SOLCOM Chief.
Ang importante masustain yung games. Hindi pwede yung mapogi. Hindi po pwede yung masyadong maingat magsalita mapogi. Kailangan sustain yun para ma-expose ng gusto. Tuloy-tuloy yung kalaban.
Parlade is a member of the Philippine Military Academy or PMA class of 1987. Meanwhile, his successor, Bacaro, is a member of the PMA class of 1988. Aside from previously serving as a commandant of the PMA Cadet Corps, Bacaro also served as internal auditor of the AFP, Chief of Staff of 4th Infantry Division, Commander of 52nd Infantry Brigade, and also head of the AFP LCAC. Lea Ilagan, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
For those watching our 24/7 live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. Senators have expressed their sentiments over the 6th and final State of the Nation Address or SONA of President Duterte. For Senator Sonny Angara, the president's speech was comprehensive as he looked back to the reforms created under his administration. However, Senator Kiko Pangilinan finds it unfortunate that the president gave priority on illegal drugs over job creation and hunger alleviation that Filipinos need to hear at this moment. Meanwhile, among the president's requests to Congress is the passage of a measure that will provide free legal assistance to the members of the military and the police. According to the president, this is to help them from charges arising from incidents related to their performance of official duty. In response, former Philippine National Police and now Senator Ronald De La Rosa made a commitment, saying he will author and sponsor a bill in the upper chamber, being the chairman of the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs. However, Senator Amy Marcos noted that the Public Attorney's Office is already providing free legal assistance, which can also be availed by the members of the Armed Forces and the Philippine National Police. Despite this, Marcos says she shares the president's concern for defending the uniformed personnel. Senator De La Rosa, who was President Duterte's top cop from 2016 to 2018, adds he will study the other request of the president for him to look into the alleged police official who imported assault rifles to the country. Meanwhile, President Duterte also praised Senate President Vicente Soto III as a capable and good man as he acknowledged the the senator's bid to run for the vice presidency in the 2022 elections. Soto thanked the president for mentioning him in his final SONA, saying that he was humbled by the words of the president. The chief executive also thanked Congress for the passage of several landmark legislations during his term, such as the Bangsamoro Organic Law in 2018, which led to the creation of Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund Act, Rice Tarification Law, and Bayanihan 1 and 2. It also recognized the extraordinary cooperation between legislative and executive departments. The Senate will resume its session tomorrow afternoon after it opened the third and final regular session of the 18th Congress this morning. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte recognized in his last SONA the efforts and sacrifices made by medical frontliners in the country's continued fight against COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Health Department expects the passage of 3 health bills before the end of the Duterte administration. Aiko Miguel will tell us why live. Yes, Aiko?
Yes, Harleen, President Duterte mentioned in his last State of the Nation address that a bill to establish Philippine Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and a health bill for the creation of Virology Institute will be passed in Congress. The chief executive believes the capability of experts to create our own medicines and drugs against viruses and diseases. But the president was not able to mention about the emergency funds and benefits that could further suffice the needs of medical frontliners. They were expecting that the president would mention the extension of COVID-19 emergency funds like having Bayanihan 3. But President Duterte did not forget to express his gratitude to all medical frontliners who are continuously sacrificing for the country's COVID-19 response. Since the pandemic began, there are more than 21,000 medical frontliners who got infected with COVID-19. Most of them recovered, but more than 100 of them succumbed to COVID-19. The Health Department is really hopeful for the passage of 3 health bills before his term ends. Like what President Duterte said, Harleen, one is the establishment of the Philippine Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the Philippine CDC. One of its components is the creation of Virology Institute. Here is Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara, the spokesperson of the Department of Health.
Tulad nung sinabi ko sa inyo nung isang linggo, we have the Philippine Center for Disease Control Bill. Ito yung naglalayo na magkaroon tayo ng highly technical na institution kung saan researches, surveillance, laboratories ay ma-integrate natin sa isa. Kasama po ang mga eksperto na tutulungan tayo for this institution para mas magkaroon tayo ng proactive responses during times of public health emergencies.
Also, Harleen, the DOH expects the passage of a Medical Reserve Corps bill.
We also have the Medical Reserve Corps bill kung saan ito yung act providing for the development, administration, organization, training, maintenance, and utilization of Medical Reserve Corps. And this is also as an in relation to what happened to us dito po sa pandemyang ito.
The third health bill is the Health Security Bill. This will strengthen the Philippine health security, emergency preparedness, readiness, and response of the country in times of health crisis. President Duterte said the government is trying all its best to respond to the needs of Filipino, saying, "Buhay muna bago ang lahat." He reported that during his term, although not perfect, that testing capacity, hospital beds, facility, and isolation beds have increased. Mega and modular quarantine facilities were also established in over a year's time. Also, with the limited COVID-19 vaccine supply that we have in the Philippines, 17 million Filipinos have received their first dose. 36 million doses of vaccines are expected to arrive, with over 30 million already administered to the priority sector. Harleen, he also said the country can no longer afford another lockdown, but with the threat of Delta variant, if it is really needed, he would not hesitate to decide so, to prevent the spread of the more transmissible and deadlier COVID-19 variants of concern like the Delta. And that is the latest live. Back to you, Harley.
Thank you, Aiko Miguel, reporting live.
The Quezon City government confirms that a case of Delta COVID-19 variant has been detected in the city. The city government is also closely monitoring a possible local transmission of the variant. Meanwhile, the Davao City government has detected its first case of the more transmissible variant involving a vaccinated man. Kath Dumaraos reports.
A returning overseas Filipino worker from Saudi Arabia who lives in Quezon City tested positive for the COVID-19 Delta variant. The 34-year-old man arrived in the Philippines on June 24 and stayed in a hotel in Makati for 10 days before transferring to another hotel in Manila from July 4 to 11. The patient experienced a slightly itchy throat on June 28 and was tested for COVID-19 on June 30. He was tagged as recovered and allowed to go home to his family on July 11. The city government said the result of his sequence sample was relayed to Quezon City Epidemiology and Surveillance Unit or CESU on Sunday evening, which prompted local authorities to retest him and his close contacts today. He and his family have been under strict home quarantine. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte has assured the residents that extensive measures have been put in place in preparation for the possible spread of the Delta variant. Meanwhile, the city government said it is also closely coordinating with another local government unit regarding the possible local transmission of the Delta variant. CESU said it learned that a male who resides in another city but works in a factory in Quezon City contracted the COVID-19 variant. His pregnant wife also tested positive for COVID-19. The said factory worker experienced shortness of breathing, colds, fever, and sore throat on July 4. He tested positive the following day. The couple is currently staying at a quarantine facility in another city until the end of the month, the city government further said. Meanwhile, Davao City has reported its first case of highly transmissible Delta variant of COVID-19. The Davao City Task Force Against the Pandemic said the case was a 28-year-old female. She underwent a swab test on June 26 after her exposure to a confirmed symptomatic COVID-19 case at her workplace. The patient received 2 doses of the anti-COVID-19 vaccine prior to her infection. Local health authorities will conduct a reinvestigation, repeat testing, and isolation in coordination with the Department of Health Davao Region up to the 3rd generation contacts of the case. The Philippines has so far recorded 119 Delta variant cases. Kat Maraos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health reported that 9 individuals who were infected with the Delta variant had been vaccinated against COVID-19. However, the inoculated patients showed only mild symptoms. Aiko Miguel explains why.
The health department emphasizes that COVID-19 vaccines, whichever brand, give protection against COVID-19 variants. As proof, the DOH says, out of the 119 Delta cases, 4 who have been fully vaccinated and got infected, 1 was asymptomatic and 3 only had mild symptoms. 5 of the Delta cases received their first dose. 2 of them were asymptomatic and 3 had also mild symptoms, while the 24 cases have not been vaccinated. The remaining 86 cases are still being verified by the DOH whether they have been inoculated. 2 of the 3 cases who died did not receive their COVID-19 jab.
Nagpapakita ang mga datos natin ngayon na kapag tayo ay bakunado, mas may laban po tayo dito sa mga variants na to. Pero yung 2 na namatay because of the Delta variant, they were not vaccinated.
Undersecretary Vergere reminds the public that no one is immune from the virus. Although vaccinated people still get infected, they don't experience severe COVID-19 symptoms and are less to get hospitalized.
Although we are saying na hindi pa naman po kompleto ang pag-aaral, nakikita ho natin vaccines work. At pag tinignan ho natin ang number of infections sa ating mga ospital sa ngayon, compared to before, bumaba ho talaga ang number ng healthcare workers na nagkakasakit at yung mga nagkakaroon ng sakit at nauospital ay mga unvaccinated.
The DOH reminds those who belong to the priority sector to get vaccinated and be protected from the more transmissible COVID-19 variants of concern like the Delta variant. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Philippines recorded 6,664 new cases of novel coronavirus disease or COVID-19, pushing the nationwide case count to 1,555,396. 5,766 new survivors were logged. This brought the total recovery tally to 1,473,009. The death toll, however, climbed to 27,247 after 23 more patients died. The health department said one lab was not operational on July 24, 2021, while 8 labs were not able to submit their data to the COVID-19 document repository system. Meanwhile, the overall global COVID-19 caseload has topped 194 million according to the Johns Hopkins University. In its latest update, the University Center for Systems Science and Engineering, or CSSE, revealed that the current global caseload and death toll stood at 194,165,023 and 4,159,142 respectively. The United States is still the worst hit country with the world's highest number of cases and deaths at 34,443,821 and 610,891 respectively, according to the CSSC. And in terms of infections, India follows with 31,411,262 cases and 408,764 deaths. In terms of deaths, Brazil comes second with 549,924 fatalities and 19,688,663 total cases. Both France and Russia, meanwhile, have more than 6 million cases, while over 5 million confirmed coronavirus cases are reported both in the United Kingdom and in Turkey. Another batch of clinical experts from the Israel Ministry of Health are now in the Philippines to share their practices against the COVID-19 pandemic. We have Marvin Callas on the line to give us more details. Yes, Marvin, how long would the Israeli delegates be staying and observing here in the country?
Yes, William, the 4 clinical health experts from the Israeli Ministry of Health will be staying over the week for 5 days starting today. The second delegation of clinical experts from the Israeli Ministry of Health arrived today at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Terminal 3 at exactly 4:15 p.m. Officials from the Department of Health, including Assistant Secretary Romeo Ong, Director Maria Soledad Antonio, National Task Force Response Cluster Head Undersecretary Leopoldo Vega, and the representative from the Embassy of Israel in the Philippines welcomed the Israeli delegate. The health experts are visiting the country to observe the current COVID-19 response of the government and as well as to share their country's experiences in battling the challenges brought about by the pandemic. Director Maria Soledad Antonio of the DOH International Health Cooperation said the focus of the visit as part of the country's diplomatic relations is focused on the sharing the best practices in treating severe and critical cases in Israel, as they have a very low mortality rate in treating severe and critical cases. The Israeli delegates will be conducting a hospital visit in several selected hospitals in Metro Manila, such as the East Medical Center, Lung Center of the Philippines, Tondo Medical Center, Rizal Medical Center, and a modular hospital visit at Quezon Institute and Dr. Jose R. Reyes. On Tuesday, June 27, a welcoming and opening meeting will be held at the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council Operations Center. The delegates will also have a meeting with the experts at the Manila Peninsula Hotel on Friday, July 30, before they send off on Saturday, June 31. That's the latest live. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you very much. Marvin Callas reporting live. Thousands of Philippine National Police personnel provide security in and out of Batasan Complex as President Rodrigo Duterte delivers his State of the Nation address. But despite the conclusion of the event, the PNP maintains security operations in the area. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why live. Yes,
Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
They will Good evening, Will. The Philippine National Police says they will ensure security in Sandigan Bayan area until the last participant in the State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Duterte has left the Batasan Complex in Quezon City. With this, the 15 substation task groups designated in the strategic locations in the area continue to strictly implement measures to maintain peace and orderliness and make sure that people adhere to the minimum health and safety protocols against COVID-19 infection. Here's an excerpt of our interview with Quezon City Police District Director, Police Brigadier General Antonio Yara.
After yung last na participant of the SONA sa HOR left the HOR area, no? And then pag nag-normalize na yung traffic at conditions sa labas, then we'll have our debriefing, no? And then our the termination of our security operation.
The PNP work hand in hand with personnel from other law enforcement agencies, including Quezon City's Task Force Disciplina and Department of Public Order and Safety. As of the last hour, the PNP has not recorded any untoward incidents in and out of Sandigan Bayan. The authorities expressed their gratitude as the protest activities have ended peacefully. At this time, heavy or moderate to heavy traffic is being experienced by motorists traversing Commonwealth Avenue northbound from Tandang Sora to Batasan Complex, while light traffic remains in Commonwealth southbound. Well, the authorities have already reopened the traffic in IBP Road, the street just next to Sandigan Bayan. Motorists may now pass through the road from Commonwealth to Batasan San Mateo Road. Will.
Okay, thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr. reporting live from Quezon City.
Oil companies announced a rollback in the prices of petroleum products after months of consecutive price hikes. In separate advisories, Pilipinas Shell, Chevron Philippines, or Caltex, and Sea Oil Philippines Incorporated said they will reduce the price per liter of diesel by 60 centavos, gasoline by 75 centavos, and kerosene by 60 centavos. Clean Fuel and Petrogas will also implement the same price changes except for kerosene, which they do not carry. The oil price adjustment will take effect on Tuesday, July 27. Other oil firms have yet to make similar announcements. Prior to this week's changes, diesel prices were hiked for 14 weeks, while gasoline for 9 straight weeks.
For the news abroad, thousands of anti-lockdown protesters marched through the streets of Australia during strict lockdown measures. Experts now expect newer, more significant restrictions as a result of it. Maeve Dog will tell us why live. Yes, Maeve?
Elsie, the city of Sydney, Australia on Saturday saw thousands of unmasked protesters packing tightly together, carrying anti-lockdown and anti-vaccination posters and signs to demand an end to current lockdown restrictions. Hundreds of police officers were deployed to control the protesters, but the demonstration still took a violent turn. More than 500 individuals have since been fined, with at least 63 charged, including 2 men who punched police horses during the protest. The event has been branded by Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison as selfish and self-defeating, as the protest can result in the whole state of New South Wales to go into lockdown, an act which New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian defines as shameful.
Millions and millions of people across our state are doing the right thing, and it just broke my heart that people had such a disregard for their fellow citizens. We don't want a setback, and yesterday could have been a setback. Time will tell.
Experts believe that the demonstrations will highly likely be a super spreader event, but we are yet to see the impact in the coming days. Meanwhile, current lockdown measures will likely be extended further than its original lifting on the 31st of July. Elsie?
Maeve, what are the current COVID-19 statistics in the state of New South Wales, Australia?
Yes, Elsie, the state recorded 141 new cases on Sunday, making it the second highest increase for this year, and more cases are expected after the protest last Saturday. Only 14% of the population, Elsie, have been fully vaccinated, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison has reportedly promised more doses for the state. Back to you, Elsie.
Thank you, Maeve and Dog, live from Queensland, Australia. Heavy rain and thunderstorms are causing flash floods across parts of London. Queenie Rivera will give us the details live. Yes, Queenie?
Elsie, families and cars have been left stranded and tube stations shut as the streets of London become severely flooded by slow-moving thunderstorms. Emergency services have been called to rescue residents in Wood Street, Walthamstow, who have reportedly been stuck in waist-high water inside their homes. Putting Mill Lane DLR stations in Stratford is underwater, as torrents of rain came rushing in, forcing the station to shut. Underpasses in Walthamstow, Kingston, and Worcester Park are also blocked. The Met Police reminded people through Twitter to not drive through flood water as they assist firefighters across several locations of the capital. According to the forecasters, the downpour will remain slow-moving in the coming hours, and showers could bring 20 to 40 millimeters of rainfall within an hour. Several showers may occur in isolated locations and could see 75 to 100 millimeters of rainfall within a few hours. An amber warning has been issued by the Met Office for storms covering London, while a yellow alert has been issued across much of southern England. Back to you, Elsie.
Queenie, how do these floodings compare to London's average rainfall?
Elsie, these flash floods, which happened within a span of few hours, were caused by rain that is double the amount of London's July's average monthly rainfall. Residents in the area have also said these storms are the most severe that they have seen. One resident who had to drive in 12 to 18 inches of water said that this is the first time he has seen this level of flooding in London. Although LC forecasts have also shown that London's temperatures are expected to rise again, hitting 26 degrees Celsius from Monday in British summer time zone. Elsie?
Thank you, Queenie Rivera, for that live report. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
The Philippines has now finally secured a gold medal in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Pinay weightlifter Hidilyn Diaz delivered an Olympic record after conquering the women's 55 kilograms weightlifting competition. The 30-year-old Zamboanga City Pride tallied 97 kilograms in snatch and 127 kilograms in the clean and jerk, with a total of 224 kilograms to beat China's world record holder Liao Qiuyun. In 2016, Diaz won the silver medal in Rio that ended the Philippines' 20-year drought.
And before we close, we will leave you with a final word, giving glory to God from the book of Proverbs chapter 22, verse 4. It says, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life."
And those are the reasons behind the news, July 26, 2021. I am Hidilyn Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.